Hello, everyone, and welcome to Lamplighter. Today we have with us our guest, Dr. Lynda Cramer. She's a spiritual counselor, ordained Reverend, Doctor of Philosophy, and paranormal researcher. She's had the gift of being able to see spirits since she was born. Lynda had an NDE where she was clinically dead for 14 minutes, possibly more, but felt like she was gone for years. After her NDE, her spiritual gifts dramatically increased. Lynda, your life is rich with spiritual experiences. I know these kinds of experiences can be difficult to put into words, but to the best of your ability, please share with us your near-death experience, and then we can dive more into your spiritual gifts and how they developed since that time.
Oh, well, first off, Matt, thank you so much for having me on your channel today. It is my absolute pleasure to be here because I've got to admit my NDE happened back in 2001, and it was one of the most extensive NDEs that Dr. Raymond Moody had ever heard about. That was his quote. With him and I spoke for about 6 months in 2003, and he was even amazed with the how in-depth my experience was. So when I say, why haven't I spoken up between then and now? It's because I was told by my great 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 grandmother, who I'm about to explain who she was. She told me to wait 20 years to tell my story. And as we all know, what happened in 2020 with COVID and other things happening around the world, there's now so many people who have an interest in NDEs. So let's start at the beginning. I was born quite sickly. And some people actually say when we get sick, we can have NDEs and wake up with psychic abilities. So from being born, I had a lot of psychic abilities. I was a quite sick child. I was in hospital for nearly 2 years when I was born. And so I've always been a psychic. I never knew the word. I never knew that there were other people like me out there. So my life growing up was pretty intense. I got a lot of bullying, harassment. I got abused a lot of sarcasm from friends and family growing up. So I married my first husband back in the 1990s, and he used to call me the witch because of the psychic abilities I had. And I still didn't research what that was. I didn't, I knew I had something, but I didn't know what. But when I had my NDE in May 2001, it all became clear to what was going on. So what happened in May 2001? I had been not well for about a week. My husband, who was my second husband, an American, we lived in North Carolina, and we weren't getting on because my immigration paperwork needed to be completed, and he didn't want to fill it out. He didn't want me to be a citizen of the USA, which I desperately wanted to be. I wanted to have a home over there. I was looking for jobs. I wanted to settle in America and become and assimilate to be an American. So there was a lot of conflict there. I woke up on the 6th of May, I went to bed, and I woke up about 2 o'clock in the morning on the 7th of May, and I couldn't breathe. It would have been about 10 minutes for me to reach the bathroom because, hello, I do like joking about this. I was literally dying to go to the toilet. So I now have a book, and in my book, I show all my photos. So the first photo I like sharing is the floor plan. Here's the living room with the front door. And as you come in, you go through a door, and this is the living room. And my body was found in this bathroom. So you can see where the bed was. We walk around this indoor closet area, and there was a bathroom at the back. So I went around to the toilet, and that's where I died, on the toilet. People ask me, was it painful? No. Was I scared? No. It was just like falling asleep. And that in itself is scary. I simply just fell asleep. Now, my husband at the time, he tells a story that he woke up because someone was banging on the wall behind his head to wake him up. That could not have been me because I was in the bed, I was in the toilet 15 feet away. And it took me 10 minutes to get there because I couldn't breathe. So I don't know who that was banging, but I think it was her, this woman, an energy being that's now with me, who I call my guide. I think she woke him up deliberately to get me help because she has helped me in other areas of my life, which I'll explain later. So he came in and found me on the floor, blue already. So he ran and got a phone and he called 911, and it was about 10 minutes for them to arrive. They started doing CPR. Now, I know as a first aid trainer that I knew I had to be. We'll get to that. CPR is only done on people with no pulse. So I was already clinically dead when they found me. I was already blue. So in my medical files, which I'm happy to show as well, I have the ambulance report where they said the basic life support crew attended and were doing CPR. And then also the advanced life support crew, ALS crew, they arrived with the defibrillator. So here's the front page of my medical report with where they say that they were doing CPR, which means that I was still clinically dead until the second paramedics arrived. So minimally, I was clinically dead for over 14 minutes because it's the time from the phone call, 911 phone call, until that second advance crew arrived with the defibrillator. So that was what happened in world time. Me, as soon as I passed out, I found myself floating in the living room. So on the map, you can see the cross where I found myself floating above the sofa. Well, I'll just keep showing it. My body's over here. There's the front door into the building. And I found myself floating here, watching the advance crew and the paramedics. I watched the sheriff. I watched even the fire department turned up that night. I saw things like what colour shoes they were wearing. I heard every word they said. I saw what they wrote on their clipboards and in their notebooks. The sheriff, who has given me his business card, so I have his business card, he had an unbuttoned button on his shirt. And he also had a limp, which I verified when I woke up. So he confirmed that this was real, the sheriff of North Carolina in Concord. So I watched for 45 minutes because when I was there when the first ambulance officers came in, the paramedics, and I also watched 45 minutes later when they wheeled out Lynda's body. Now, I call it Lynda's body because at that point when I'm floating, I had no connection to who she was. I was no longer Lynda. I was this energized being floating above the ceiling with no care, no concern, no happiness or hatred for anything. I was just at peace, which I've now learnt what peace actually means. So when I'm floating there and I look down, the weirdest thing I did notice was that I had no feet. Below my knee, it didn't just stop, it sort of dwindled out to where there was nothing. So it was like a slow evaporation just below my knees. I had no feet. So as I watched them wheel my body out, which was no connection to me, I looked at this person and I saw them take her out on the gurney. Then I saw everyone leave. I saw my husband at that time. I saw him grab his key. I saw him take his wallet. I saw him walk out, turned off the lights, and he locked the door. And then the door opened again in the darkness. And through the door came all these orbs of light. They were dark blue. fluorescent orbs, and they were floating around my head, probably 10 to 15 of them. And they had white energy right in the middle of them. And they were energized. They had energy coming out of each orb. So this is a picture that I drew when I was still in hospital when I woke up. So there's me floating, and I had all these orbs around me. Some were about this big, some were a bit smaller, and they energized out of them like this, like a sparkler, if you know what a sparkler is that we use for fireworks. They were floating around me. I had no idea what they were saying. There was no communication, but they were communicating because they didn't bump into each other. They were moving around and respecting each other. I don't know what they were saying. I have no idea how they communicated or even who they were. But again, I had no fear. I had no concern. And I had no happiness either. It was total peace. So these orb things floated around me for a few minutes, and then they all stopped. And instantly, they all shot out the front door. And I thought, wow, what next? So I did have a thought process at this point, even when I was floating, this energy being of who I was. But I didn't ask questions like, wow, the sheriff has seen how dirty the house is. Oh my God, who's going to pay the bills while I'm in hospital? There was no questions like that. Who's going to feed the dogs? Because we had a few dogs. There was no concern at all for what was going on around me. In fact, there was no concern at all. The only thing I felt was this peaceful energy and the allowing, how I was just allowing everything to unfold around me without judging and without assuming what would happen next. So once these orbs flew out the door and I'm just still floating there and I wasn't moving, I actually thought, could I move? But I could not move. It was like I was just positioned there. I get a tap on my shoulder, who now I know is her, this guide I have, who I also assume to be the one that knocked on the walls that woke up my ex-husband. And instantly I'm in what I call the fog stage. If you close your eyes and then open your eyes again, but now you're in a totally different place, without moving, without transportation or transport. There was no feeling of being moved at all. But it was like I closed my eyes, and when I opened my eyes, I'm in this field of flowers, rolling hills of hundreds and thousands of flowers. The colors were colors I could not explain because they're not on this earth. I could feel the flowers beneath me, and I could smell the flowers. I could taste the flowers, and I could hear the flowers. So as I moved, because as I looked down, I now have feet, as I tried to walk, the flowers moved so I wouldn't crush them. So they knew that I was still learning how to be in this plane of existence. They understood my perspective. And very quickly, I learnt that they knew what I was thinking too. So one of my lines that I love to use now is, what we think, we create. I love using those words. They're my words. What we think, we create. So in this place where everything is panoramic, I could see behind me without turning my head. I could see a massive buildings, a huge city over on my left. There were mountain ranges 10, 50 times bigger than Mount Kosciuszko here in Australia, Mount Everest. Huge buildings and mountains. There was thousands of people, thousands of animals just walking around happy, smiling and interacting together. And as I observed these people, I write about some of them that I saw. One was this little group of boys, young boys, and instantly one of the boys turned into a bear and another one turned into a dog, and then they'd still just continue playing together. I saw a woman walking down the road, because there were roads, cobbled roads with guttering like we have here, and houses, but we don't need houses because we don't sleep, we don't burp, we don't eat, we don't blink, we don't yawn or have gas emissions like we do as humans. But there were houses there where people could go in and just be. So this medieval woman, just like Anne Boleyn, Henry VIII's second wife, she's walking down the street and I'm following her, and instantly I became her. And I could sense me walking behind her. I knew that I was behind her. And I knew every life she'd ever lived. I knew everything that she had ever done and would do, because time does not exist. So this is where we get to that oneness of heaven, where everything is one. I became this woman. And then I saw another lady wearing medieval clothes. Instantly, without a blink, she changed into like a 1970s hippie, where she's got a little mini skirt on and she's got the hippie hairstyle, the short bob of the 60s, 1960s. So we think, we create. I also talk about a duck. I was sitting on a chair, because there are chairs in heaven. So one of the videos I've done on my own YouTube channel is, why are there chairs in heaven? Because we do pause to contemplate. When we contemplate and when we think about things, that's when things become clear. Yeah? We go for a walk and things come to our heads, yeah, in this life. But in heaven, what I learned is when we contemplate, we become what we're thinking about. So as I'm looking at this group of ducks, and I look at one of the ducks in particular, instantly I'm that duck. I could see this woman with long hair sitting on the chair, and now I'm separate to her. I could feel my feathers, I could feel my webbed feet, I could feel my beak, I could feel where my ears were on the side of my head, and I'm waddling, quack, quack. I am the duck. I went into buildings, and one of the things that was constant in this place was the music. Even in the buildings, I could hear the music. There was no source of this music. There was no speakers. It was everywhere. And I've always wondered what it was. And it was only, ironically, about 2 months ago, I found a video from this man who says that he has ascertained and theorized that the music in heaven is a frequency of energy. And I heard this rhythmic, it's like a tribal, repeated rhythm of energy. And it's when we move with that timing of the energy is when we create the energy of that frequency. And this is where we talk about with law of attraction and manifestation, yeah? So in this place, I estimate I was there for 18 odd months out of my 5 years. I estimate it because I looked over at those buildings and I estimate in my mind's eye that would have had to have been 100 kilometers or 100 miles away. And I walk about 3 miles an hour. That's my walking pace. So as I'm walking down the streets and I'm walking through little villages and I'm walking down past streams and the rivers and I'm seeing the mountains, which I also went to, I estimate how long did that walk take me to get to those cities? Months. easily months to walk 100 miles when you're only doing 3 miles an hour. Days, weeks. So when I go over to the mountains and I'm looking up and you can't see the top because these are so high, as soon as I thought about the top of the mountain, I was on the top of the mountain. No vertigo, no feelings of, oh my God, I'm going to fall, because there's no gravity there. People ask me, was it cold? What was the temperature like up there on the top of the mountains? It was the same as below. There was no temperature fluctuations. I saw people in Eskimo outfits, and I was seeing people in bikinis, and neither of them were sweating or getting cold because there was no temperature there, because we don't have a physical body that needs temperature alignment. So I went into the buildings, no elevators or escalators, because there was no technology in this place. No one had phones, no one had kettles or electrical outputs. No one needed to plug in their chargers because there was no electricity, because everything was electric. It was all electromagnetic forces, which I studied about in my PhD. So there were stairs there though. One floor leading up to the next. You could go up and down the staircases. And I did go up and down the staircases. But that was only free will, because all I had to do was think about the 28th floor and I was instantly up there. So there was choices, even in heaven, that we could make. So I'm walking around interacting, becoming all these beings, animals, and being one with everything there. And I get a tap on the shoulder again. Then I find myself in front of this huge, oh, before I go there, I will just show you this picture. This one's a picture I drew of the flowers. I can't explain the color, but these were one of the type of flowers I saw where the petals had energy coming out of the end of the petals. Energy coming out of the petals. So I get this tap on the shoulder, and now I'm in front of this huge cathedral. And as the doors open, it was extremely long church. Wooden planks from trees that would have been 300 feet tall and 10 to 20 foot wide. We can't imagine trees that big here. I saw limestone tiles or chunks of limestone that would have been 30 foot across, and it melded in with the wood in this place. And I'm walking down and there are chairs like church pews, and they were long. 30 people could easily fit on one of these chairs or pews, and it was made from one plank of wood. And I'm walking forward, and as I get up to the top, there's 3 beings at the top. Pardon me? And here they are, the 3 beings. And there's me standing in front of them. So these beings were energy. The energy went up from the ground like a reverse waterfall. And it all escalated at where I call a head. And the energy was going clockwise and anti-clockwise at the same time. And they didn't speak to me. They just stood there. And as I was asking, what are these things? I heard inside my head telepathically, we are not here to judge. And here we go with my psychic abilities. I knew what I had to do. Like a psychic just knows things about things. I knew at that point that I had to open that box in front of me and process all the objects inside it. So as I opened this box, there was no walls or floor inside the box. It was eternal. And inside was all these little round orbs, circular orbs of energy. And inside each one was a video screen that contained a memory of something I had done in my lifetime. So I'm looking at these millions of memories, and I knew, like a psychic does, that I had to pick out each one and process and heal that memory. So another picture I have that I drew when I woke up is me holding one of these orbs. And this is the video of when I was a baby. I'm about 18 months old, and I'm in my front yard I'm in the front yard of my grandmother's house. She had a white cat, and I must have already known that it was wrong to pull that cat's tail because I knew it was wrong even at 18 months old. So as I pull this cat's tail, I became myself at 18 months. And I experienced it firsthand like I was 18 months old again. And I'm processing how it made me feel to pull that cat's tail, how I felt when the cat meowed and hissed at me, how I felt during that whole process. And I had to heal it, heal the emotion that the emotion caused as energy. Emotions are energy. The more we're happy, we build an energy inside us. The more we're sad, we create an energy within us. So I had to process and heal the emotion to create that peaceful energy again. But then it didn't stop there because now I became the cat. And I had to relive what the cat felt walking through the grass, and I could feel all the grass blades on her paws. Because now she was me. I was the cat. I could feel the whiskers, sensing the air coming through the whiskers. I could hear and sense little bugs crawling in the grass like a cat does because I was the cat. And then I sat near this little girl, human, was wearing her diaper, and I became the cat. And I felt the pain when this little girl pulled my tail. Ouch! Which came out as a hiss because I'm a cat. I felt the pain going down my tail and all the way up my spine. And then I ran away. So I had to process how the cat felt, the emotion of the energy that was created. I had to process and heal and forgive why that girl pulled my tail. So one memory took about anywhere from 15 to 45 minutes. Easy. And it's tenfold the emotion we feel. I was crying when the pain from that cat, when I was the cat, I was bawling my eyes out. And the water's falling all over the floor in this church. But as soon as I healed that emotion, all that water disappeared because it was no longer relevant, because the energy no longer existed that surrounded that emotion, if you can understand that. It's a healing and forgiveness process. Some of my memories that I went through would have been an hour and a half, if I think about it. 2 hours, some of them, because there were some of them that were pretty bad ones. And then there was some that were really good that I just really had to go through a lot to heal. So we heal the good and the bad memories. So how many memories did I go through? I estimate about 8,000 of my memories. So when we look at like 45 minutes to an hour and a half average, we're talking over a year that I was there just processing my life review. Life review. Creating peace emotions from the karmic energy that we created in our existence. So as I'm still processing hundreds of these memories, I get another tap on the shoulder. Didn't see who it was, but again, I'm in this fog stage. Close my eyes, and it's like I open my eyes, And now I'm in this space, no walls, no floor, no ceiling, and everything is white. Now, there are a couple of shows that do show this. One is the show Manifest, about the people who boarded a plane and it lands 5 years later. In the very last episode, when they leave the plane, they walk out into a space where there's no space. There's no walls, floors, or ceiling. So if you have Manifest, have a look at that last episode in the last 5 minutes, and you'll see what I walked into. It was pure white, blinding light, but nothing hurt my eyes. It's like looking into, I've got a round ring light here, and that's the sort of light that it was, the sort of white. So I'm in this space and I've got feet because I'm looking down thinking, why aren't I falling? Because again, no gravity. I couldn't feel the ground beneath my feet, but I knew that I couldn't fall. And way over in the distance, I saw somebody very tiny. And as they walked towards me, they got bigger because there's no space, no other objects to show distance. This woman comes up to me. She's got long blonde hair, very basic dress with a tie at the waist. She comes up to me and she says, "You're not supposed to be here." She's quite angry. And I said, "What do you mean I'm not supposed to be here? Where am I?" And she's like, "Oh, I don't." And she's so frustrated. So then I'm saying things like, "I don't know where I am because now I've got a mouth. I can move my mouth instead of being telepathic for the last couple of years." She was moving her mouth when she spoke. She says, "Don't you know where you are?" And I said, "No, I have no idea where I am." She said, "Well, you're not supposed to be here. You've got to go back." And I said, "Well, how can I go back if I don't know where I am?" And she said, "Oh my God." So then she sort of gets composed and she's flattening down her dress and she says, "Do you know who I am?" I said, "No." She said, "My name's Karina and I am your great, 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 great grandmother." Wow. She told me when she was born. She told me when she died. She told me in detail for months how she lived in a wooden shed, a little wooden cabin. She showed me things like how to make clothes when there's no sewing machines, how to make a washing machine when there's no electrical components. She showed me how to make linen blankets. She showed me how to melt iron to make an axe handle in detail. Extremely long conversations. Oh my gosh, it makes my eyes water. Just thinking about how long and how much detail she gave me about everything in her life and what she does. How to make a wheel for a cart that's then pulled by the horse. Which horse to choose to pull the wagons. Oh my gosh. So there's so much calculations in everything of her existence back in the early 1800s. And then she started telling me about me. And she said, "You've got to go back because you have to have your child." I said, "What?" So we were now in 2001 when I passed away. And she says, "Remember this date, for this date is important." And it was a date in 2005, 4 years in the future. She said, "You're going to have a child who's important to us." Wow. So do you think I ever forgot the date? No. I now have my 18-year-old daughter. And she does have her own things, but that's her life to lead, what she does. Karina went into detail and she said, "You will be working." Oh, first of all, she said, "You must return to the land from where you're from, because if you stay here, you will be rounded up in September and you will be sent home, and you will never have the jobs that you need to learn your lessons. She was talking about 9/11. She told me, because I died in May 2001. She said I had to leave before September 2001. She said people will be watching from afar. They will be looking down from the heavens, which is look at all the helicopter footage we had. And she said people will be looking down from the heavens and watching as everyone is covered in grey, as buildings collapse and everyone is in shock and dying. I knew what was coming. Could I stop that event? If I'd rung up the president of the USA and said, by the way, Mr. Bush, you're about to have this event, do you think he would have believed me? So I had to keep quiet about that. But I did come back to Australia. I came back in July. And the first thing that I saw about after 9/11 is when they rounded up all the illegal immigrants and sent them home. I would have been included in that because my immigration had not been finalised, and we got married in August. So I would have been illegal in September. So Karina said, you must go back because you're going to be working for the police for 10 years. Now, I did work for the police, Queensland Police Service. I worked as an admin officer from 2002 until 2012, 10 years. She said I'd need 2 years off to get through all the mental anguish that job creates. And guess what? I did get mental anguish because I got diagnosed with PTSD, which I still have today. She said, you will become a first aid trainer for 2 years. And guess what? I left the police in 2012. I took 2 years off, like she said I would. And then I was a first aid trainer from January 2015 until January 2017. Exactly 2 years, like she told me back in 2001. She told me about my daughter. She told me about 9/11. She told me about that earthquake in Indonesia. 250,000 people dead. Again, how did I cope knowing that was coming when there was nothing I could do about it? Because no one would believe me, even if I said I was a psychic. Then she starts talking about the tunnel. She says, if you go in there, you will never be able to go back. So I have a photo of the tunnel that she was explaining in this white space, no floors, no ceiling, no floors. The tunnel, again, was circulating both ways at the same time. And right at the end, there was a big light at the far end of it, pure energy. And this thing was emitting energy all around it. And as I'm looking at it, I wanted to go in there. It was so attractive, like a magnet. I could feel myself getting pulled into it, and I swear I wanted to go in that tunnel. It was so good, the feeling to want to go in there. And she said, you can't go in there because if you go in there, you reincarnate. And then she started talking to me about reincarnation. And that's where we learn new lessons. We write new soul contracts of what we want to create within our own soul level experience of our eternity. So she explained it as heaven is a place where it creates energy, it is energy, and it needs energy to sustain it. So the more we raise our vibration, the more we stay happy, kind, loving, generous, giving people, compassionate, supportive people, the more we are creating the energy of heaven. So is heaven a real place? Yes, but it's not on this plane of reality in our three-dimensional world. It's through some magical portal that we still haven't discovered how to get there. But I went there. So she's talking to me and she's telling me all about life contracts, reincarnation, how we learn lessons to heal, like our life review. So then we create better energy. And she started telling me about things like children who die early. And she said, how do we not learn what self-sacrifice is unless a child is sacrificed for its mother? Wow. How beautiful is that when we really think about that? How do we learn to be nice unless we see someone who's being aggressive? How do we learn how not to treat people unless we see others doing it? So we learn a lesson. And that's why people do sign up to do horrendous acts in their life. Right now in this existence, I'm pretty sure I'm wondering why Bill Gates is doing what he's doing. Fauci and all those people who seem pretty confused, if you ask me, because I don't like using the HAT word. Pardon me? But they've got a reason to be here. Just like, let's look at people in history, Genghis Khan and Hitler. They had reasons to be here. So people learn how not to be, how to love, how to cherish, how to treasure and support and to forgive when bad things happen. It's all about energy. It's all about frequency. The higher we raise our vibration, the more we create the heaven reality within us. I like reading the Bible. I've got one right here. When we look at the Bible and Jesus says, Jesus is within us. He is the energy within us. So when I wrote my book, 5 Years in Heaven, sure, I've used these beings as the front cover, whoever they were, but the second half is the teachings of heaven, how to be angelic, how to be kind, how to be giving, how to be supportive, how to be forgiving, and most of all, how to be loving. So there's my book, which is a testimony to virtually what Karina taught me. So as I'm talking to Karina, and she says to me, you've always had the ability to go back. And it was reminiscent of the Wizard of Oz with the red slippers. She said, all you have to do is think about where you were and you will go back there. And instantly I remembered what we think, we create. So as I started thinking about my house, the clothes I wore, I used to have a St. Louis t-shirt. As I thought about my squirrel socks that I used to wear, and I got familiar again with that energy. I became that energy again. But this time I wasn't at home. I woke up in the ICU ward where I had a blood pressure cuff on my shoulder, on my arm, that was really hurting. And the first time in 5 years, ouch, I've got pain. What is this? And I wake up and I open my eyes, and the first thing I see is this blue tube that they're pulling out of my throat. And I'm thinking, ouch, that hurts. Why can't I talk? And I'm talking, and the nurses are talking to me. It was so unreal to be in this place. I had to learn how to go to the toilet. The nurse said to me, have you been to the bathroom lately? And I said, why? And she said, have you got a pain in your stomach? And I said, yeah, it hurts pretty bad. She said, well, go to the bathroom. And I said, what do you mean go to the bathroom? She said, go and sit on the toilet. And I thought, why? But as soon as I did sit on the toilet, my bodily functions took over, and it was like, oh my God, how often do I have to do this? Breathing. How often do I have to inhale and exhale? This is work. I haven't had to breathe for 5 years. What do you mean I have to inhale? What? And what's blinking? I had to learn to blink. I had to learn to yawn. I had to learn to fart and burp. Sorry, I'm being honest. Sleeping. What was that about? Because for 5 years I didn't sleep. So waking up and relearning how to live was a huge thing I did not want to do because it felt so unnormal to the normality of being energy. But straight away, a nurse came in and she said, "How are you?" And I said, "I'm more concerned about you. How's Motley?" She looked at me and she said, "How do you know about Motley?" And I said, "Oh my gosh, you've been here all week. You've got a grey cat. He's 14 years old. His name is Motley. He's got long fur. He's got kidney trouble. You took him to the vet. It's $3,000 for the pills. You don't know whether to put him down or get another little kitten." I said, "How's Motley?" And she's looking at me like, "What?" Everything you've just said is true. I don't know what to do with Motley. He has got kidney disease. It is $3,000 for his pills, but how do you know this? Because this is my first time in the ICU ward in months. And they put me into my own room. And there's a big window next to my bed. And I'm watching these 5 people at the end of my bed. This elderly lady sitting on a chair, which the chair was there. There was a Labrador dog playing. There was a man about 50 or 60 years old. There was 5 people and the dog. The nurse walks in and she says, "How are you feeling?" And I said, "Oh, it's good. I'm just listening to these people talking." She's looking at the chair. She's looking at me. She said, "Lynda, there's no one there." And I looked at the man and I said, "If you want her to know that you're here, can you please bang on the glass?" Bang, bang, bang. The whole glass was shaking like this. She dropped her notebook and she ran. I never saw her again. I don't know what she thought when that glass started shaking. Pardon me, with the bangs that this man made. She obviously couldn't see the people I could see. I went home finally, and I'm sitting outside because it took about 2 months for me to get my energy back. Seriously. Even when I returned to Australia, I was put straight back into hospital because the flight really did upset my body again. So 2 months I'd sit on the front veranda of my home and just sit in the sun every day because I know how healing the sun is for us. Isn't it funny in lockdowns they didn't want us to do that, hey? But I was sitting in the sun every day to get the healing energy of the sun. And I'm sitting there, probably day 3 of being home, and I heard Lynda. And I'm looking around. No one was around. And then I heard Lynda. And I realized it was only about 6 foot to my left. And I looked over and it was this big maple tree that we had growing in the front yard. And I'm looking at this tree and I thought, what? Telepathically, this tree was talking to me. So I'm looking at this tree and I'm thinking, no way. And I thought in my head, if you're real, can you move? Now, I've got to tell you, there was no wind this day. There was about 8 trees in the front yard, all maple trees. But this one started shaking, and I swear about 100 leaves fell and they all landed under this tree. Then I knew what song was on the radio. Turned on the radio and there's the song. I can pick up my phone and then it starts ringing because I know when the phone's going to ring. I knew so much about so much stuff. Everything. For the first couple of weeks, I was so in tune that I knew what song was on the radio in Japan. I could hear the conversations of people in New Zealand. I knew about a volcano that was starting to smoke over in Indonesia. I was so tuned into the whole planet, like a Mother Earth being. So what do I do these days? I've got a lot of gifts. Furniture talks to me. Cars tell me what's wrong with them. funny. People come to my house and I say, oh my God, your car's telling me it needs a new muffler. And they go, oh, how do you know that? It just started making noises last week. So confirmation. I had a gentleman come to my house and he had a leather jacket on. And I said to him, oh my God, your jacket's telling me you're not the owner. You got it from your cousin. He said, yeah, I did get this jacket from my cousin. He gave it to me because he didn't want it anymore. I said, oh, it wants you to fix the tear on the inside pocket. He said, how did you know that? So he unzipped his jacket, he opened it up, and sure enough, there was a big tear on the inside pocket. He said, how did you know that? I said, because the jacket is talking to me. I talk to dead people all the time. Cemeteries and hospitals for me are, I can only go there when I really need to go there because there's so many people at cemeteries and hospitals that other people don't see. So my life these days, what do? Yes, I do psychic readings. Yes, I do mediumship, but that's not what I'm really interested in. Because one thing Karina did tell me, she told me that I would get sick. In 2017, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. I have the CT scan, I have the MRIs to prove that I had a brain tumor. I cured it naturally without chemotherapy. I went back and had another MRI. The doctor was holding the report and he said, where did it go? And I said, well, look, I did not have surgery. This is my real hair. I haven't had surgery because it was up here, was up there. And he said, did you have like pills or anything? I said, no. He said, how did you cure it? What happened? I said, I cured it naturally by my affirmations and by living in a high vibrational state. Guess what the doctor said? You can leave now. Because he knew that I was no longer a client. So that was in 2017. 2020, if you watch my videos on YouTube, you'll see that I lost my voice for 3 months. People were contacting me saying, Lynda, there's something not right with your throat. You better go and have a scan. Guess what they found? An inch, about that big, cancerous lump in my throat. I had the CT scan. I had an MRI. All proven. I've got all the records here next to my bed. So I came home and I started the self-healing again. Affirmations every day. I do. I have and I am healthy. I am healthy. I am fit. I am healthy. I started living and breathing the energy of being healthy. I went back and had an MRI. The results went to the doctor. I went into his doctor's clinic and he looked at the report and he said, where's that lump gone? And I said, do you see a scar? He said, how did you get rid of it? And I said, I self-healed. And he said, you can go now. So when I look back at Karina and all the stuff that she told me about the lies and the deceit of 2020 going into 2025. She told me how many people would get sick, reliant on pharmaceuticals. And if we can start truly believing who we are at our core, which is an energy force, we're an energy core, like a battery. And if we charge ourselves correctly, nothing can hurt us. We're impervious to illness. So I do like pulling a little religious slant on my work. When we look at Jesus, who was the epitome of high vibrational states, he walked amongst lepers. He walked amongst people with smallpox, chickenpox, all the other poxes. He was with diphtheria people. Why didn't he ever get sick? because sicknesses live on a low vibrational state. And once we can raise our vibration and we live in that state, the body heals itself. So as part of my research, which is in my books, I talk about our cellular network. Our cells regenerate every 90 to 110 days. So every 3 months, we get a brand new healthy body. So why do we retain illnesses or scars or short-sightedness? It's because we believe we have it. What we think, we create. So that's what I try and teach people now. And I am so privileged that I meet lovely people like Matthew, who wants to share my story, to give you, the viewer, the hope and the trust that this is believable. So not only does heaven exist and there is something after we die, because I've died, I've got all my medical files and I love showing them to Barris County Hospital, and look at all the information in there. MRIs, CT scans, ECG reports. There's proof I've died. We can all live happily, healthy, loving people if we choose to be. Thank you so much for listening to me today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Wow. There's so many things that you've shared that are that they're so telling. They have so many there's so much that's implied and so much that's communicated by what you shared
Yeah.
about
It makes me
energy,
cry,
about
Matthew. It really does. It makes me cry. And this is one thing, because time doesn't exist. Every time I talk about my NDE, it's now. It's like I don't have to go back in memories. It's right now. It's right here present. And that's why I cry, because it's happening to me now. It's a weird thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that other near-death experiences say the same thing actually, that they feel like it's happening again as they're sharing it, and
Yeah.
took them a long time sometimes to be able to say it at all because they just start crying. Yeah.
Absolutely. And as you can just see, I'm virtually bawling my eyes out now
Oh,
because it's so real, because it's right now. It's real
yeah,
now.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so gosh, so much. I want to say first that a lot of the things, for my audience especially, that a lot of things that you've described are not uncommon. Uh, it is uncommon for them all to happen in one NDE, but they're common patterns.
And
Um, yeah.
yeah, that's what I love looking for, Matt. And I'll be honest, one of the reasons why I went and got my PhD was to make sense of what I went through, especially when we start talking about energy healing and manifestation, law of attraction type stuff.
Mhm.
So I got into science, and I also got into psychology. I did 4 years out of a 6-year psychology degree. I never finished it, so I can't say that I got a psychology degree because I didn't finish it. But I use my education to justify those commonalities that other people have. One of the things that I do joke about is when I landed in heaven and I found myself in that field of flowers. How many other people have explained that they landed in a field of flowers? It's
Right.
almost like there's an X on the ground with a tunnel that we come down like a chute, and we come down, we all land on the same spot, you know?
That's funny. That's
So
that's a funny way of putting it.
yeah. So how does that happen? Because
Yeah.
I don't remember teleporting or being transported there.
Mhm.
It was just there, you know? I can't
Yeah.
explain
Yeah.
where there was because there's no physical location on this
Mhm.
planet or in the universe, solar system, wherever we are, that explains it, you know? So, because it's
Yeah.
energy. But we do, what I have discovered through the similarities and listening to so many other NDEs out there, trying to justify my own experiences. What I find is that if we have a belief system, we do create what happens to us after we die. A lot of people ask me about hell. Did I go to hell? And I now understand heaven as well as hell are not existing places that we go. Like we don't just check in like a hotel room. We create that scenario in our consciousness based on the energy that we have within us. So when we look at Jesus, of course he ascended to heaven because he had within him the love of God. When we look at people who are hanging on to shame, grudges, jealousies, even people who are sarcastic, who try to be better than others, they are building this energy within them. Not that I'm judging, because we never judge, but we do create this energy within us where once we pass over, we create a reflection of those emotional ties into the afterlife. So
Yeah.
I do have videos on my channel about where is heaven? How do we create heaven? Because I even spoke to a priest who went to hell, and you'd think a priest would go to heaven, but he had doubts about his religious beliefs. He couldn't understand how Adam and Eve had two children and then one died and the other one went off and joined another group of people. That sort of thing. So those doubts within him created that regret of becoming a priest, where he didn't feel that he was telling the truth to his parish. So, of course, when he died, he had an NDE,
I
he had a
see.
heart attack. He created this bad, hellish experience where he was still living in um his own regrets.
That is so interesting because this is exactly the kind of thing I've been thinking about and studying about with NDEs. Uh, so there's so many things. So just real quick, there was an NDE by a woman named Erica McKenzie, and I love this story. It's an incredible story. And she says in one of her videos that it's the love connection, the energy love connection with God that brings us up to heaven. It's
Yeah,
it's like an ascending energy, like that. It's that love of God inside of us, that connection, that feeling that just shoots us up to a heavenly
yes,
dimension. And I thought that totally makes sense. Um, and I think, I mean, I know love is kind of a funny, very broad word in English, but I think it's a kind of just whenever you have that real deep kind of pure compassionate feeling or goodwill that's something that comes from God and that's what
yeah,
brings you back up. The other thing is you were talking about how he kind of created that experience for himself. And you mentioned a lot in your experience of the ability of projection of your beliefs and how it changes your spiritual body or your surroundings,
yeah,
which I had a theory about that before I heard your experience because of some ghost stories where they have wounds still in them and stuff. But I didn't know for sure, but that was always my theory. But when I first heard your story, confirmed to me that you do actually project your appearance and your to some degree or another your environment.
yeah,
Which is not to say that there aren't actual beings or places necessarily, but that
yeah,
you attract them or you project onto them maybe. And
yes,
so it's interesting to me because as you say, you mentioned the priest. One of the things that I was thinking about is there a relationship between faith and where you go in the next world? Do your beliefs have anything to do with it? And I think you address the question through your through sharing that story very beautifully, because he was actually lying, because he didn't really
Yeah.
believe what he was
Well,
sharing.
he wasn't lying. He was lying to himself.
Lying to himself. Exactly. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's kind of a lack of personal honesty or intellectual integrity
absolutely.
to be doing that. So then you project that and carry into the next world. And
Yeah,
but if you so that the denying of truth, that blocks you in a way. That's breaking that love connection when you deny
absolutely.
truth, or when you are not honest with yourself about what you believe. So,
Yeah,
um, one of the biggest things that you talked about, and it has been a huge topic for me, that it's been very difficult in some ways, is soul contracts. That you learned about soul contracts, and I've heard some pretty what I thought were rather startling stories about that. Like I think
yeah,
it was I can't think of her name now, something Cohen, Karen Cohen. Um, and she was talking about how she experienced that there was a premortal contract between her and those who had sexually molested her as a child. And I thought,
yeah,
that is the strangest thing, because to me, it
yeah,
makes sense that you would make a contract with someone for a good purpose or something you want to achieve in the world. But to contract with someone that you're going to do something evil is very strange.
yeah,
But I kind of, and you can tell me if you think I'm right about this, but my sense is that when you're looking down on the earth, there's lots of trouble. And there has to be some opposition
yeah.
and conflict, or else how can you have an experience? You know? And the question becomes, what will happen if I go down into one of those bodies? Because one of those bodies I go down into is going to be having a troubled childhood, or because you got choices. You've always got choices,
Mhm.
and you're
Yeah,
affected by your environment on how those choices are directed. So, like someone who's raised in an abusive household might become abusive to their children. So you look
mhm.
down and you say, oh, that child, is going to be born, and they have abusive parents. If I go down into that body, I might become abusive too. But,
That's right.
right, but if I do it, maybe I can bring some light into that family. Maybe I can evolve them
Yeah.
spiritually a little bit more. Maybe
Well,
I bring
there
something to them.
there is something that we haven't mentioned yet. Two words.
Okay,
Free will.
right, free will, free
Free
will.
will. Just because we're looking down and we see that child that's being abused by its parents, we still have that free will of how we create our reality in that existence, knowing that
Hmm.
that is what's going to happen to us.
Yeah, yeah.
You
So,
know?
so like maybe they think there'll be some choices available. I've heard this too, that you'll have sometimes a plan of a series of choices, and that you can,
Yeah,
have like it's like more like a tree of possibilities rather than one single possibility.
absolutely.
And
Yeah,
so they're thinking, well, maybe if I do this right, I can heal this family, or at least make it a little better than it is now, for the next
yeah,
generation. So then I'm imagining, that person, maybe they think to themselves, maybe they reach a nut in that hypothetical futures where it looks like, oh, at some point I'm going to have the situation where I'm going to be sorely tempted to abuse my own child, and I'm probably going to do it. What am I going to do now? And then somebody else comes along and is like, okay, I'll agree to be that person, and maybe I can
yeah.
be the one that will forgive you, and then we'll have healing. So this is a long-winded way of saying I think I figured it out, because I know God wants us not to be harming each other. He just
Yeah,
recognizes we're going to do that. Sorry, it's just the way humans
absolutely.
are. But
Yeah,
can we can we be that person and grow from it? Can we be
well,
that even that abusive person and grow from it, and
yeah.
learn, and yeah, and
And
ascend this world?
and look at where we live right now in the history of humanity. Look at what's happened in the last just the 5 years in the last 5 years. All the negativity and the mistrust, misinformation that's come out. Thank you, internet, because that's been a causing factor in that. But at the end of the day, what I feel is happening now is that there is a big shift in people's belief systems where virtually looking into religious traits of the past, and we're coming up with this idea or theory of whether this is true or not in our own belief system. And we're looking more within ourselves now, which is now why so many people are now coming out as spiritual. And we're really now delving into who we are individually rather than who we are created by society. You know, in psychology, we talk about personality. Personality is defined by society. It's our personality. We become that abusive parent. We become what our teachers tell us to become and what classes we go into. But then we look at our behaviors, which is totally different. And they're all our attributes of compassion, caring, love, support, and all the rest of them. I only like talking about the nice ones, but then we also have attributes which are low self-esteem and lack of confidence, which gives us things like jealousies and insecurities. So when we have or exhibit those vibrational energies of emotions, because emotions are energy, which is how we feel, because you mentioned the word before, how we feel.
Mhm.
Our feelings are emotions, which is energy. So the more we put out these negative energy, like pheromones, the more we do attract in, and we, like a magnet, attach or mirror other people around us. I had a friend a few years ago. She came over to my house and I thought she had her act pretty well together. And she said to me, "Oh, this other lady and I went out to this mosque last night. Are you jealous?" And I said, "Why would I be jealous? You can do whatever you like because I allow you to be a person. I'm not jealous. I'm not competing with you." But then when she stopped, we were on the phone, and after we got off the phone, I thought, oh my gosh, she expected me to be jealous because she herself is a jealous person. So
Yeah.
she was reflecting her emotions, her energy
Mhm.
onto me.
Egoic
So
projection.
I rang her back a few days later and I said, "Are you aware that you did this? You were projecting your emotions onto me, your energy, because you were thinking I was going to be a jealous person because you actually are the jealous person." And she got so angry, hung up the phone, never spoke to me again.
Oh, man.
See what I mean? So
Because
I'm
you
an
hit on the
instigator.
truth.
I'm an instigator of the truth. And a lot of people can't handle the truth because they don't like doing the hard work of finding out what they're doing, you know? So that in my book, I've got so many exercises in there and I get so many emails from people. Believe me, I get emails from people and they say, "Oh, I don't agree with that exercise because you're trying to make out that I'm a selfish person." Now, why would they be telling me that unless they were? See what I
Mhm.
mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So, so they're taking it out on me instead of looking within themselves and healing it. So
Mhm.
they're at least identifying that, what they're incorrectly doing to create the wrong sort of energy. Because I'm a big one on law of attraction. I love getting law of attraction ideas. I share them on my videos, every one I get, because we all do have different energy levels. We all have different ways to manifest and create our own energy fields. So the more we share, the more we know, and the more we do grow as a person. So I don't try to ever tell people, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to give up on you." I wait until they give up on me because that shows me then that that's where they've stopped with their growth themselves. Because I'm a teacher, I'm a mentor. I try to educate. And the more people that come to me, the more I do get overwhelmed, especially when I get like 200 or 300 emails in a day. But I do try to be there for everybody who needs me. you know. Somebody said to me one day, they said, "Oh, how much have you made from your books?" And I said, "Well, I'll tell you what I haven't made from my books is the fact that I've given away over 5,000 copies for free in the last 2 years because people expect that we do things for money. And I think that's wise to mention that with you because I do psychic readings, but guess what? I don't charge for them.
Mm.
I only ask for a contribution just so I can put someone in my diary so then their time is valuable to me. So, some people give me a lot more than others. One lady sent me $1 one day, but she lives in Cambodia and she only earns 14 cents an hour. So do you think I'm going to treat her any less than a millionaire? Because I've had a few millionaires do readings for them. I had an Oscar-winning actor came to me to see if his next movie was going to win him an Oscar. Um, so I have had a very big range of clientele. Um, and I don't judge who and what they are because I don't do titles, even though I've got a PhD, because that's my integrity for people who do live by titles. But at the end of the day, I treat everyone the same. Everyone's individual. Everyone has the capacity to be better or want to be better. And if somebody does want to try their best to be their best, I'm certainly going to be the one backing them and pushing them up that hill because it is a hill. It's a hard hill. The amount of nightmares that I have when I'm going through healing processes, the amount of awakening nights where I've got the flashing lights and downloading information. It isn't fun being a psychic or an NDE. So I hope nobody ever just thinks, oh yeah, it's fun it's a thrill ride, because there are some horrible instances of being a psychic, dreaming plane
Yeah.
crashes that come through, knowing that 250,000 people are going to die in a tsunami, 9/11. I wish I never had that information
Mm.
before the event, but I'm so grateful that I did because it's a testimony to myself that it shows that I try to control the energy of this planet. And right now, the energy of this planet is absolutely screaming for help. Look how many aggressive people are on the roads. Look how many people are now self-serving, um, privileged. Look how many Karens are out there. I don't like the word Karen because that's a title that we give people. But look how many people are doing erratic, unkind behavior to others. And to me, that's just so not fair because what I put out today is an energy field. It does affect everything around me. My desk, my computer, my chair, my bed, my room that I'm in, my bed where I sleep, the food that I eat, everything is affected by my energy. So of course, when I interact with other people, that energy does become contagious to them as well. So the more we're kind, the more we care, and the more we smile and just
Mm.
compliment people. I make it a law every day. If I go to the shop, I pick 5 people and I say something nice about them. Oh, wow, I like your shoes. Where did you get those? Or, oh, where did you find that? I really want to buy that product. Which aisle's that in? That looks nice. I hope you enjoy it. I give people compliments, even total strangers, because some people never get complimented. So how can they ever raise up their vibration and be a true powerhouse of energy unless someone else encourages it?
Mm.
So I use words like soul searching warriors because we are warriors. We have a battle on our hands right now. Love is going downhill. So many people are turning away from the church. Look how many people are criticizing the Pope with his passing and the new election of the
Mm.
new Pope.
Mhm.
You know, do these people honestly deserve total strangers to criticize what they do?
Mm.
And if you are a person who criticizes total strangers without knowing their stories, without knowing what they've been through, that shows me that person has a lot to learn and to grow from. And I'm the first one that'll put my hand up and say, come to me and I'll help you as much as I can.
Mm.
Because that's who I am now.
That is
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. I think those are all really good things, and I like those ideas of just, saying a good word to people just once in a while, just saying something nice. Because
Yeah,
I always hear in the life reviews and these NDEs that, it's just these little things that they did, helping literally helping an old lady cross the street was one I heard from from a life review.
absolutely.
Or
Absolutely.
yeah, or talking. One of them was a day camp with retarded children. She sat down with the little boy, and sang to him, and that was the best moment of her entire life, according to God. It was, yeah. So I think that's right on. That's absolutely right on. Now you talked a lot about the psychic gifts and the struggle of that. I know some people who have these kinds of gifts, besides you. And I've had a little bit of my own experiences too. I don't like see spirits, but sometimes I'll have a feeling of something being around or
Yeah.
someone. And the thing you said about trees, I don't think it's that. I mean, to me, it was not a shock at all because I had felt connection to trees before and like that they were communicating with me. And I'm not saying I started having a full monologue with them necessarily or conversation,
Yeah.
but I could as I was getting deeper into my spiritual gifts and I could connect to what I would call Holy Spirit. Sometimes I'd also get messages in my mind from relatives who passed on. Usually it's my grandmother. Usually she's just trying to kick
Yeah.
me in the butt and get me to behave myself. Um, but then I started getting the tree thing once in a while. I was like, hmm, that's weird. It's like I feel connected to nature and
Well,
like this tree's communicating to me. I think it's the energy.
can I just interrupt for a minute, Matt?
Sure, sure. I know you have so many things to say.
I want to show something. For those who don't know, Matt and I were supposed to have this interview 2 years ago, but things happened and we lost contact and now we're back together. There's always a reason for it, Matt. I've got a Facebook group called Dr. Lynda Cramer Paranormal. Okay. In this group, just the other day, so there it is there if anyone wants to go join. Okay. And I will be sharing this in there too, Matt, so people, my followers in there can watch it as well. But I shared the other day, this lady's talking to a tree and the tree moves towards her. So it's true. This happens. Okay. And if you read the comments on this post, there's a lot of people who say, oh, wow, I went outside and tested this and it works. So when we connect with trees, not only do we receive all their electrons, which gives us psychic abilities, why do you think all the hippies in the 1970s used to go and hug trees and have flowers in their hair? Come on, because it's the electromagnetic forces that gives us psychic abilities, as well as the rays from the sun. But we can connect and communicate with these inanimate living objects and animals. So test it out. All you got to do is go out to a
Yeah.
tree, hold it for a few minutes to get a good connection of energy, and then start talking to it. So trees talk to me all the time. I actually hear it in my head like a voice.
Mm.
It's a voice that I hear in my head. Yeah. So it is true. It does happen. We've just got to acknowledge that we have it, and then we have to give ourselves consent to have it, and then start practicing it.
Yeah.
It's that easy.
So I want to say, man, so many things. So the tree thing. So just real quick, I mean, most of the time I'm not talking to trees, but once in a while this happens. And I do get the thoughts in my mind like you described. But what it was interesting to me is that it felt like what the tree was communicating was just a reflection of God. It was like they were a network of energy coming straight from him. So, because I know the tree doesn't think, I imagine maybe the spirit of the tree thinks, I don't
Well,
know.
how do we know that?
Okay. They don't have brains, but I mean, maybe the spirit of the tree is thinking in some sense. And so I
Yeah,
feel like what's happening is that they are just in tune with the will of God and heaven. And so when I tuned
yeah.
to the tree, it felt like it was saying the same things that I would say Holy Spirit was telling me. It was very similar.
Yeah.
So that was interesting as kind of a conduit. And so I've done some other experimenting with things, and uh, I had a friend that had some psychic gifts that I was talking to, and she was trying to explore some things that she'd experienced with astral projection and with that she had not even done it intentionally. She just fell out one day, I guess.
Yeah.
And with different gifts that she discovered that she had over time. And I was in my room and I was just trying to see if I could pick up on, I guess what you would call Akashic records, the history of
Yeah.
an object. And so I thought I'd just go around and I'd touch things in my room. And as
Yeah.
I touched them, what I thought was really interesting was that things did come into my mind, but it wasn't what I was looking for. It
Yeah.
wasn't the
See, there's your ego.
information. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. My ego was saying, okay, I'm going to access the Akashic
Yeah.
records, it's cool, right? But that is not what came to me. What came to me was
Yeah.
personal messages for me about the object, which was very interesting to me. Because
Yes.
sometimes it was like I've had some experiences with Native Americans and Native American medicine man. I have a
Yes.
bear in my room. I touched the bear and I could feel again the feelings I had with that Native American medicine man and the spirit that he brought. That was it's like his vibe. It was like it was bam right in the room again. I was like, oh, that's it. That's the feeling. I forgot this feeling. It was like they have this sort of signature spiritual feeling that comes with them.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful, kind of nature spiritual feeling. And I kept getting messages, everything I touched, and all of a sudden it dawned on me, oh, it's like the tree. There's no difference between this and getting inspiration through the Holy Spirit. It's the same channel. I'm getting
Yeah.
things that I'm getting from God through these objects. And I started to realize I'm not, it's not like magic in my view. It's not like magic really. It's like,
Yeah.
it's a connection to heaven or source energy that's communicating messages for you when you need it. Because I've heard other stories of like there was this very popular what would you call him? I guess he's kind of a guru, uh, teacher of spiritual things. Eckhart Tolle. He talked about that he had met a person who had the gift to heal. He would touch you, and I forget what it was that he would do exactly, but he talked
Yeah.
about that every time you do it, he would sweat and he would have water drip down his arm and his
Yeah.
hand. And he started to make it a business and just heal people for his living. But it wouldn't always work.
Yeah.
He sometimes could get it to work and sometimes he couldn't. And when it didn't work, he started to fake it. He started
Yeah.
to make the water droplets come down his hand just to show them like, oh, it worked, and so he could keep
Yeah.
making a living. And it was such a sad story. And I'm thinking, oh, that's the worst, because he really did have a gift, but now he's also a fraud. But it's funny because he's
Yeah.
both. So,
True.
when people are so skeptical because, oh, there's so many frauds out there, what if they're both? What if they're both real and a fraud? It could be both.
Yeah.
Or maybe they do
Yeah.
have a real gift, or maybe they don't. But I mean, I totally believe your experiences, but I just think it's interesting because it seems to me, in my experience anyway, and my friends, that while some gifts kind of operate automatically, a lot of them are conditional, and they're conditional
Yes.
upon us kind of aligning our will with heaven or source God. Does that fit your experience, or do your gifts come
Absolutely.
automatically,
Well,
or
yeah. Well, the first thing I want to say is psychic abilities are not always accurate.
hmm,
If they were, it would be a guaranteed profession and government would step in and regulate it and have accredited courses at universities where it was taught.
hmm,
So it's not always accurate. So I say to everybody who comes to me for a psychic reading, it's only what I receive on the day. You could come back 3 weeks later and you get a totally different reading because it's just the information that we receive. And what you were talking about before, which is called psychometry, where we touch an object, I could pick up a necklace today and I could tell who the first owner was, but I could touch that same necklace in 2 weeks' time and I find out the price that they bought it for. See what I
Oh,
mean?
yeah, it's exactly
So
like I'm describing. Yeah, every time it's
different
different.
information
And it's
comes
not
at
what
different
you're looking
times.
for necessarily. It's just
Yeah,
whatever comes from
it,
source to you.
that's right. Well, that comes through
Oh,
from
perfect.
source.
Perfect.
So that's why when we do like psychic readings or you go to see a psychic, the first thing is always leave the ego at the door because you don't know who or what is going to come through. You know, I get a lot of people that come to me and say, "Oh, I need to talk to my dead grandmother." And the first thing I say to them is, "Why do you need them for?" Because
Mhm.
that's something in psychology that you
Mhm.
need to work on as to why you miss them. Because she will never come through and tell you whether to marry that man. She will never come through and tell you where she hid the $1 million.
Mhm.
She will never come through and give you any choices or decisions that you have to make in your life because that's all free will. The only thing that they do give us is that comfort and joy, that emotion of heaven, which is that energy feeling, to give us that encouragement to move forward and keep going with our own existence. So we have to take away that ego of what we expect from a psychic because it's never the same information. You know,
Mhm. Mhm.
I like that you mentioned remote viewing or astral projection.
Mhm.
I had a development class at my house years ago, and there were 6 people there. We all lied down on the floor, and I said, "Okay, here's a pen and paper for everybody. We're going to do this meditation, and I want to write down what you saw." So we're going through this meditation, and I said, "Okay, we're all going to go to Hawaii because I live in Brisbane, Australia. So Hawaii is a long way away." I said, "Tonight we're all going to Hawaii." And I said, "Close your eyes and just imagine that you're on a plane going over there. You land, and where do you go?" So about 20 minutes later, I said, "Okay, let's see what everyone wrote." One lady said she was driving a car, but it was raining. They had to use the windscreen wipers. The next lady said, "Oh, I'm in a shop. And as I leave, I had to use an umbrella because it was raining." The next man says, "Oh, I'm inside a house and I can hear the rain on the roof." So all 6 people, wherever they were when they were in Hawaii, it wasn't the same place, but they all said it was raining. So I got out my phone and I looked at the weather of Hawaii, and guess what? It was raining. So we don't always get the same information. Don't expect, if you do play with whatever tools of the trade, like I've got something here that I use my dowsing rods and I also use tarot cards because they're tools of the trade to give us some sort of clarity or confirmation that we physically can't see. But at the end of the day, you never have that expectation of what will happen because anything can happen. And that's why it's imperative that we have to protect our energy, ground our energy, and most of all, only project out the energy that we want others to receive.
Yeah, no, your comments on protecting energy are really, really important, I think. And I've
Yeah.
heard good and bad stories about tarot cards. I
Yeah.
don't know why it sometimes doesn't seem harmful and sometimes it invites other dark things. I don't know. It just seems
Well,
like
it's
it's
like any
contextual.
tool. And I'll explain that one, Matt.
Okay.
As soon as, like, here's my dowsing rod. So if no one knows, these are copper white. They're copper rods, okay? And they've got little grounding plastic on the end because it's copper, okay? So if I use these, this is a tool that I am giving permission to the universe to manipulate to give me the answers I want. So it's not me just saying, "Oh, yes, they're going to point outwards for yes," and then I manipulate them to go outwards for yes. Will I ever win $1 million? Yes, right? So we want the rods to move by themselves, which means that there's something other than ourselves external energy that's using these rods.
Mhm.
So that's why with anything like tarot cards and especially Ouija boards,
Oh yeah, I've heard.
you
I've
can
only heard
invite,
negative things about them.
they are so negative because the first thing we say is there anybody there? So
So
we are inviting in anything negative or positive.
yeah.
So the first rule of using any sort of rods, cards, Ouija boards, whatever, pendulums, crystals, whatever it is that you
Mhm.
use, the first thing is you must set your boundaries of who can come through.
Yeah.
So if you want to communicate with your dead grandmother, then you make it extremely clear, I only allow my grandmother to come through today. If anyone else is here, you don't have permission, so please go away.
Mm.
See what I
So
mean?
yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm thinking to myself, so do you see spirits constantly, or does it kind of come and go?
Well, if I'm just here in my house, obviously, well, there is something here in this house. We've seen it a few times, but I can't make it happen. It's up
Okay.
to them to make it happen.
Oh, so
So, like these photos,
they're actually revealing themselves to you.
that's
So,
exactly right. They
oh,
reveal themselves to us. So, if I go to a hospital, there are, I'll just say it, hundreds of deceased people still walking those walls hoping to get picked up. So, what they're doing is they are making themselves apparent because they're looking for their loved ones to come pick them up. So, if you're waiting for a cab, you want the cab to see you. So, you have that intention of being seen.
okay,
Okay. And it's the
okay,
same with like deceased bodies at hospitals. So it's their choice whether they allow us to see them or not.
that makes
And
sense.
as I say, people come to me and they say, "Oh, can you please connect with my father? He died last year." And I say, "Well, I don't have a magic fishing rod that I can throw into his dimension, hook him up, and reel him back in and say, 'Come on
Hmm.
through.'" It doesn't happen like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
always their decision whether they come through or not. Okay.
yeah.
But I've had some extremely good mediumship results. I had one, um, I had a lady at my house. Her 22-year-old son turned up. He looked like he was 22. And she told me he died at 3 years, 3 days old. His name was Ben. So that's one of my videos on my channel, Visitor from Heaven, Ben. He stayed for 45 minutes telling me every single thing his mum had done in the last 22 years. I ended up going out the back of my house and he came out with me. She was inside bawling her eyes out because she was very distraught. And I said to her, "Hey, when you were in Singapore, did you drop an iron on your foot and break a toe?" And she said, "How did you know that?" And I said, "Because Ben's here and he just told me about it." I said, "Do you remember being at the dentist and you had your top left wisdom tooth taken out?" She said, "How did you know that?" And I said, "Because Ben's telling me he was there holding your hand that day." How could I make this sort of stuff up? Unless he was there telling me.
So if you like would are you able to tune in and just kind of see if there are spirits around, or is it always where they have to reveal themselves?
Oh, if I tune in. Now, when I say tune in, it does take energy to do this stuff. Okay.
Mhm.
So I don't do it all day, every day, or else I burn out and I'm asleep for the next 3 days because
Oh
that's
wow.
just how psychic abilities work. Because it's
Yeah, I've
energy.
heard that.
The
I've
more
heard
you
that.
put out, the more you burn out. It's like a candle. The brighter it lights, you've got to leave it off for a while, right? Or
Mm.
change its batteries to recharge it like a
Mhm.
torch. So if I tuned in, I do see more than if I just like look around. We've got to learn how to tune in. And the biggest one is to take away our ego. We sit and instead of thinking about ourselves, we think about everything else around us. So right now I can hear the traffic outside. I can hear my air conditioner because I've got the AC on because I'm living in Australia. It's always hot. I can feel the energy of the people in the unit next door to me. I know that I'm on the third floor, so now I know there's people below me. So we become aware of our surroundings, and then we feel the energy. So, pardon me, like if I go to a cemetery and I close my eyes, which is why I wear glasses, I have no hesitation. I never want to cure my eyes because I'm very short-sighted. I'm nearly blind. So this is like a joke from the universe, and I'm blind because I don't need to see my eyes to see what's going on out there. So I close my eyes at a cemetery and I feel for energy fluctuations where it changes. And we can do this ourselves. The easiest one is just rubbing our hands together. You feel that heat, that's friction, which is thermodynamics, which is science. And then we put our hands out and we can feel the energy that's affecting our hands. So if I put my hands out towards a car going past, I'll feel the energy of that car. If I put my hand towards a light, I can feel the energy coming out of the light. So if there is something or someone around me, you feel that fluctuation of energy.
Mm.
So we practice it. You have to practice it. Some people just boom. Some of my stuff comes to me just boom. I don't need to practice it. But most of us do have to, the more we do it, the better we get at it.
Yeah, and I guess but to what I was saying before, maybe that's kind of asking Source or God of the universe to reveal that to you in a way.
And there's your consent.
Yeah, yeah.
One of my books is called Psychics Explained. How to get psychic abilities, what are they? So I list all the psychic abilities, how to get them, how to get rid of them if you don't like them, because some people do get scared when they get new gifts.
Mm,
So, and I talk about how to get them with
mm,
techniques. And the biggest one is giving ourselves consent to have it.
mm,
How many people say, oh, I'm not a psychic? They're already creating that they're not psychic. So the
mm.
first thing is to say, I am psychic. I do give myself consent.
Yeah.
So then you've got to tell yourself what you give consent to. Do you want to use like psychometry, like where you touch an object, like you were talking about before? I give myself consent to be able to pick up objects and to read or to know who owned it previously. I give myself consent to see spirits and ghosts because there's a big
Mm,
difference, spirits and ghosts. And that's why I've got my book Ghosts Explained. So I talk about what is a spirit, what is a ghost, why do ghosts stay earthbound? And then I've also got the 9 pages of transcripts from the ghost called Shelley in there as well. She was a ghost that came to my house. She died in the 1970s in a car crash. She wanted me to go to the hospital. She wanted to go to the hospital to see how Dave was, the guy who was driving her car. He died. Well, he survived. She died.
mm,
So she was very confused. Young girl from 1976. So I wrote about her and I wrote down all her transcripts of what she said to me in my house. And then I've also got evidence of this. So for some of you, please don't get angry or upset by it, but I've got real ghost photos. I
mm,
took these photos. They're real ghost photos. You can see his nose hair. You can see his teeth. And I've got 3 photos. They're in my books because it shows that this stuff is real if we do put it out there that we want to accept it. So it's all about consent and it's all about opening ourselves up so we're not just paying attention or being aware of just us. The more we connect with trees, buildings, even my pen, because that's got ink in it, which is natural fiber, so it has some sort of conscious energy to it. Everything we have, including our water, look at the work of Masuro Emoto Masuru, whatever his name was. He did all those water experiments. Water retains energy, which is emotions. So the more we tell things that we love it, look at our plants. If we talk to plants and we say, hey, I love you, please grow for me, those plants will grow even if you don't water it for 6 months. But if you've got a plant in your house that you're always angry around and you're always complaining and being sarcastic and using all that negative energy around your plants will die because they can't handle it. So these experiments are free and they're ones that we can do in our house at any point. I've got plants in my house and they thrive because I'm always touching them and saying, "Oh, I love you."
Hmm. Um, okay, so I got a couple other things I want to cover.
Yeah,
Um, let's see. So at one point you talked about reincarnation, and I've done quite a bit of digging on that because, I grew up in a very Christian household, and
yeah,
I mean, fundamentally, I would still call myself Christian. I just have a kind of broader than typical view, I guess. But
yeah,
yeah, and so I would, but the reincarnation thing was totally strange to me when I started hearing that with NDEs. And it took me many years to really decide, okay,. This is real. Well, I
yeah,
won't say many years, probably one or two, um, but anyway, when I finally decided that, I did some more research, and I know there was some, it became clear that it's not a universal thing. And I think you mentioned that in one of your books, that this is not necessarily something that happens for everyone,
no,
but that it can happen. It's another free will thing, like you were
that's
describing.
right. Yeah,
But yeah, so I think that's an important distinction because, I
yeah,
I think it could be tempting for someone to say, "Oh, well, I'm just going to come back again anyway," and whatever.
yeah,
But you don't really know that, first off, and second off, I think from what I've studied, and this isn't necessarily the case, but I think it's probably the case that you have to go through whatever you failed of in your last life and face it again, and probably it will be harder
yeah,
this time. So it's not something
absolutely.
that anyone wants to have to go through.
Yes. Yeah. So my philosophy on reincarnation, because it is just a theory, okay, because it's not proven,
Okay.
we do sign up to come here to learn specific things, which a lot of people will agree with. I also believe that we can write in sub-clauses where we can exit this life if we want. We look at sub-clauses as being like near misses where we nearly died. I nearly died when I was 20 when I broke my neck. I nearly died when I survived a plane crash, which is one of my videos on my channel where I survived a plane crash. We all have those near miss experiences. So we can have that clause written in if we want to exit our lives before we actually do. Um, but with regards to lives and lessons, there are so many lessons. Let's just pick one of generosity. How do we learn to be generous? Well, we all say, okay, I want money so I can give it out to the homeless. That's generous. But then we have to come back and do another lesson. So now we become a homeless man sitting on the street with hardly any clothes and no possessions.
Hmm.
So now we are receiving the generosity of people walking past giving us a 10-cent piece or $1. So then we might come back again. And now we're a generosity. We're learning how to be a baby in a life where our parents are abusive and they're conceited. They don't give us our time. So there's millions of different ways to learn just one of our lessons, like generosity. So we don't always just learn it on one hit. So we come back and we come back. Next time I might be Genghis Khan. He was generous. He had a few wives. Okay. So I'm sure that he had some lessons there in generosity. Then the next life I might be, I don't know, one of the Henry VIII's first wife. She survived. He divorced her. So how generous did she have to be, knowing that he spared her life? He could have killed her like a couple of his other ones. Yeah. So there's all these different situations and lives that we can be in to learn our lessons. And we don't just learn one in one lesson. Hopefully we do. So we don't have to come back and do it again, right? But then we go to heaven and we have to keep that energy going. How easy is it to fall out of love? People do it every day. There's always, they fall out of love, they get divorced, they break up. Every day this happens. So how do you think heaven deals with that? Unless we come here like a jail sentence, because some people say it's a jail, come in here. Unless we come here to value how special, rare, and most importantly, cherished it is to love. So when we go back, we've got that energy and we're creating that heaven energy again. So there's a lot of theories. I don't know all the answers, and that's why I keep learning. I still read. I watch videos. I love watching NDE videos of what other people go through. And I say, wow, that was so different to mine. Um, but I don't judge. There's a lot of fake people out there just doing it for the money, which we see through those. The real ones like me, we see through the fake ones because they're just repeating other people's stories to make it their own. So why do they exist? Why do we have false people out there telling other people's truths? So then we do learn that discernment. So we do learn to know what is right and what is wrong. So then we do learn how to have integrity, values, and morals at the end of the day. Yeah? And that's all part of being in heaven.
So we've covered a lot of territory here. We've talked about energy, soul contracts, spiritual gifts, um, and how to tell something is true, or how to, what would you say, ensure that our messages are coming from a good source. All
Yeah.
these things are really important. I really appreciate that you've been able to been so open and so forthright, sharing your experience and all the things that you've gone through and that you've experienced spiritually, and it's absolutely incredible. Um, and I think it's just absolute miracle just to be able to even have this conversation right now. You know, to we're
Yeah.
talking about all these spiritual gifts and that we've experienced, and we're sharing it with the world, and they want to listen. It's incredible.
Yeah.
But so I just want to say thank you for sharing all these wonderful experiences, and I think
Mm.
they could have a credible potential for impact in our for those who are listening. And would you be willing though to share some contact information in case audience wants to reach out to you and learn more?
Cool. Yep. So my name is Lynda, Lynda, and my surname is Cramer, Cramer. So a simple Google search will find me with all my other interviews and books, etc. I've got. But I do have a website. It's called Lynda Rae, LyndaRae, Ray with an E, .info. That's my website. I have links on there to purchase my books. I have a link on there how to obtain a reading from me. And if you put my name, Lynda Cramer, into YouTube, you'll find my own YouTube channel. It's called Dr. Lynda Cramer. Every video that I do has all my contact information on there. I have a lot of playlists. I have one's dedicated just to heaven information, like why is there music in heaven? Why do we have chairs in heaven? What's the colors like? I have ones there like NDE guests where I've interviewed other people, ghost information, personal development, psychic information, etc. All educational, not scary stuff in the paranormal world. I've also got a Facebook group on Facebook. It's called Dr. Lynda Cramer Paranormal, if you want to go and join that. It is a closed group because in this world I've realized that there are a lot of skeptics, stalkers, and other people out there who like putting people down. So we do ask a couple of questions just to join that group. I like sharing in there most days. I like doing inspirational quotes, videos like you just saw with that tree moving, ghost videos, um, anything. I actually encourage people to put their own stuff in there as well. Because as I say, the more we know, the more we grow, and we only learn from investigating and researching what is out there. So that's how you contact me, guys. I've got all my email is on all my videos. I do welcome emails. I do get about 50 to 200 a day. So a lot of my time is going through my emails, but I do try to reply to every single one that I get personally. I don't have admin staff, it's just me. Okay. Yeah. There you
E-
go.
Excellent. Thank you so much.